Disclaimer, this plotline does not align exactly with the events that took place in the show How to Get Away with Murder. It represents a hypothetical situation. Annalise Keating, one of the most prominent and scandalous criminal defense attorneys and law professors at Middleton University, has been murdered. Bonnie Winterbottom, Annalise's dedicated associate, arrives at the crime scene and notices that Annalise was shot. Due to recent events in Annalise's personal life, Bonnie has a feeling that the culprit is someone she knows. So she narrows down the suspect list to Gabriel Maddox, the son of Sam Keating from his first marriage. Sam Keating was Annalise's deceased husband. Vivian Maddox, Sam Keating's ex-wife and the mother of Gabriel Maddox. Michaela Pratt, Connor Walsh, Asher Millstone, these were the law students who were chosen by Annalise to work at her law firm, and then also Oliver Hampton, Connor's boyfriend, who also unofficially worked for Annalise's law firm. Bonnie takes the gun from the crime scene and gives it to Annalise's friend Nate Leahy, who works for the Philadelphia Law Enforcement Department. Nate then takes PCR of the DNA fingerprint sample found on the gun. PCR is taken through gel electrophoresis, where the DNA fragments move from the negative to positive pole on the gel. In gel electrophoresis, the smaller and faster fragments move towards the positive pole, while the larger fragments stay at the negative pole of the gel. The DNA samples from the fingerprint sample on the gun and the suspects were amplified for VNTR loci 1 and loci 2 on two separate gels. Based on the DNA fingerprinting results from the gel electrophoresis, we can confirm that Gabriel Maddox and Vivian Maddox are biologically related. We can see that in both loci 1 and loci 2, Gabriel and Vivian share a common band. The other band in Gabriel's DNA fingerprinting samples at loci 1 and loci 2 come from his biological father, Sam Keating. Therefore, Vivian Maddox is definitely the mother of Gabriel Maddox. At loci 1, we can see that all the bands of Vivian Maddox match all the bands of the fingerprint sample from the gun. This also holds true for the bands of Michaela Pratt and the fingerprint samples from the gun. Therefore, Michaela Pratt and Vivian Maddox can be potential suspects of the crime. And the victim of this crime, Annalise Keating, and the suspects, Gabriel Maddox, Asher Millstone, Connor Walsh, and Oliver Hampton, can be considered innocent because their respective bands do not match that of the bands of the fingerprint sample for loci 1. At loci 2, we see that the bands of the fingerprint sample from the gun match with the bands of Michaela Pratt and Oliver Hampton. So based on loci 2, we can consider these two to be potential suspects. So the rest of the suspects, Gabriel Maddox, Vivian Maddox, Asher Millstone, Connor Walsh, and the victim of this crime, Annalise Keating, are all considered to be innocent. However, based on our loci 1 analysis, we know that Oliver Hampton was already considered to be innocent. This is because his bands did not match the bands of the fingerprint sample from the gun exactly at loci 1. Therefore, he cannot be the culprit of this crime, because the suspect must have the exact same bands as the evidence at both loci to be considered the culprit of a crime. So this leaves us with Michaela Pratt as the culprit of the crime. We can verify this by checking if the bands of Michaela Pratt match the bands of the evidence at both loci 1 and loci 2 exactly. When doing so, we see that the bands of the fingerprint sample from the gun match exactly with the bands of Michaela Pratt at both loci 1 and loci 2. Nate then informed Bonnie that Michaela Pratt was a match for the fingerprint sample found on the gun at the crime scene. Bonnie confronts Michaela about this and learns that she wanted revenge from Annalise, as Annalise had ruined her life and hid her father from her for years, who later died at jail. Michaela Pratt is now being tried for the murder of Annalise Keating.